I was wondering when I was going to get a comment like this because you won't be able to go through classic rock discographies very long before someone asks, why don't you do Led Zeppelin? The good news is I am absolutely prepared to talk about Led Zeppelin's entire discography, and I'm prepared to do it right now. The bad news is I will never be able to do it in the format of the other videos I had done, that format being, hey, this is a new thing to me. I just experienced this and I want to share with you what I just newly experienced because I grew up with Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin is the reason that I got into music in the first place. Now, Led Zeppelin is the only classic rock band that I grew up with because after I got into them, I immediately got into Black Sabbath and Ronnie James Dio and Ozzy Osbourne and Iron Maiden, all them, and I became a metalhead. And I listened to several metal bands, but there was a solid year where Led Zeppelin was really the only thing I was listening to. And it all started with hearing Fool in the Rain playing in a car. And I wasn't the biggest music fan before this. I had a couple phases where I kind of got into a band here and there, but I heard Fool in the Rain and I was 12 or 13, and I don't know, everything just clicked. And I suddenly had this feeling like this is what I want. I need more of this. So I got into The Outdoor as an album from Best Buy, and Fool in the Rain was still the best song on it, but I also really liked Carousel Alhambra and All My Love, which were on that album. Shortly after this, a schoolmate of mine, he lived in my neighborhood. He was a couple grades above me, but he had LimeWire, and he was a cool guy because he had LimeWire. And so I had asked him to download and burn CDs of every single Led Zeppelin album, and he very graciously did. So Led Zeppelin starts off releasing 2 albums in 1969. These are both heavy blues albums, and they weren't just a heavy blues rock band like some other bands were doing, like say Blue Cheer or Fleetwood Mac at this time was also a blues rock band. They took it to a whole new level, not just with the speed and the heaviness, but there's this element of timelessness that they have, where you can still tell when you listen to it, it's from that time period, but there's something about it that goes a little bit deeper, and it communicates to everyone regardless of where and when they were born. So when people say that Led Zeppelin reinvented music or reinvented a whole generation of music, I tend to agree with them, and I think that Led Zeppelin is absolutely deserving of that kind of praise and those kinds of titles. Their third album, just as good as the first 2, goes in a more folky direction, so a lot more mandolin and acoustic guitars here, with really only 1 or 2 songs that could be classified as hard rock. And then their crowning achievement, Led Zeppelin 4, I still think is their best album. I think a lot of people would agree it's their best album. It's packed full of hits, not just hits like Black Dog, Rock and Roll, and of course Stairway to Heaven, but I mean also songs that maybe show up on the radio a little bit less often, like Battle of Evermore or When the Levee Breaks. I mean, really, you can't go wrong with anything on this album. They release Houses of the Holy after this, which introduces a bit more experimentation and forward thinking. Really, some of it didn't work out well, namely The Crunch, which is not a fantastic song. But there are several really big hits on this album that took Led Zeppelin to another level of musicality. Over the Hills and Far Away is a famous song on this album. I do have a hard time ranking this album in my list of album rankings for Led Zeppelin. The main reason being is because 3 of the best songs that are on this album, Song Remains the Same, Rain Song, and No Quarter, I think are good songs, but they're better on the Song Remains the Same live album. So just as a result, I have a little bit less of an emotional connection with Houses of the Holy as a studio album. Now, the Rain Song is great either way. You can get the album version or the live version. The Song Remains the Same and No Quarter, pretty much every time I pull up the studio version, I just kind of think, why am I not listening to the live version? It's so much better. But they somehow keep their monumental success and creativity going with their following album, Physical Graffiti. Now, I used to think that Physical Graffiti was my favorite album from them. It got demoted one step down with Led Zeppelin 4 taking its place, and I think the main reason for that is because the end of Physical Graffiti, which is a double album, has a handful of songs that really could have gone without being released, and it would have made the album a bit stronger. But this album has Into the Light and Kashmir, which are two of their best songs, absolutely. It also has some other really cool songs that don't get played on the radio too often, like Custard Pie or The Rover. Oh, and 10 Years Gone is an absolute masterpiece. I couldn't live without that song. It's not always easy for a song to give me an emotional reaction, but 10 Years Gone does it every time. But yeah, the final three songs, Boogie with Stu, what else was there? Oh, there was Black Country Woman and Sick Again. Not really a big fan of either of these. Sick Again is particularly a gross song when taken into context that we know this is a band that has a proclivity for underage groupies. If you look at the lyrical content of this song, it's just gross. Like, you're grown men. What the fuck are you doing? And their decline as a band really starts here. Not to say they don't keep releasing great material, but their guitarist, Jimmy Page, is just getting deeper into an unsustainable heroin habit. Their drummer, John Bonham, getting deeper into an unsustainable alcohol habit. But their following album, Presence, still has a few good songs. It's just a lot weaker as a whole album. But Achilles' Last Stand, its opener, is one of their best songs. For Your Life is a cool song. It's a great riff. And I really must say, I think Hot Song for Nowhere is a bit underrated. No one ever talks about it, but I've always liked it. Then they release In Through the Outdoor, which again is weaker as a whole album, still has a few great songs, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Now with In Through the Outdoor, their bassist slash keyboardist, John Paul Jones, really takes the reign here, so you can hear a lot more of his influence at the forefront of the music. Well, In Through the Outdoor is released in 1979, and their drummer passes away in 1980 for alcohol-related reasons. The band decides to stop continuing, although they released one more album called Coda, which is made up of just some recordings that they had collected along the way. The best of these by far being We're Gonna Groove. But that is my review of the Led Zeppelin discography. It's hard for me to highlight one specific album or era where I'd say if you want to get into Led Zeppelin, get into this, because they released so much great material. One important thing to know about Led Zeppelin is a lot of people agree that they were best when they were live. So definitely be sure to check out their two main live releases, How the West Was Won and The Song Remains the Same. They are absolute masterpieces. And that's everything. Thank you for watching. Here are my favorite Led Zeppelin songs.
For so long, it's not true. Thanks to you, I'm much obliged.